Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well. You amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. And yes, you are looking amazing today. And even all the trolls out there, they're looking amazing too. That will wind them off the clock, trust me. Anyway, can't help people who don't like people who say nice things to people, can you? Anyway, so we crack on and get on with some meat and potatoes. As what you have just seen at the beginning of this video is a video that was sent to me. It was emailed to me. I believe it didn't originate, but where they'd got it from is Twitter. So this was off Twitter. And you can see in this video that this is clearly an interaction between Bryan Kohberger and a female. That's right, a female. And even though, look, what I'm going to say is, I don't want to say that because this clip exists, this is proof that Bryan Kohberger is not the person who did this crime. Not at all. I'm not saying that. We all know that monsters can hide in plain sight. But this clip, what I've just shown you here, is proof that people like me, people that don't just succumb to the mainstream media narrative, legacy media and what they put out and what the sheep tend to migrate to, and that is that because law enforcement have said that someone's done something, there is no other story. Nothing else matters. There is no grey area. There is no between the lines. There is no mistakes to be made because they don't make mistakes. Even though we've proven that that's bollocks. But look, what I will say is all we hear is one side of the story, don't we? And I'll give you an example. It's like our family dynamic. We have stepchildren. We have our own biological children and stepchildren. I think it's what you call a blended family. Is that the term? Blended family. So you have one child who migrates between the two households. And because the adults don't get along, the child controls that narrative. We get told a story of what goes on at that house and they paint a picture of this almost archaic prison rules and things like that. But then we find out that the other household is being told the same thing. So you've got the person in the middle sort of playing off, the two households. And it's what we have in these cases. We have legacy media who are grabbing hold of the general public and they are saying, look, this person has been accused of doing this crime and we believe that he did it. And this is why, because he's a woman hater. He is an incel. He is yada, yada, yada. And that's all that's been pushed by legacy media for over a year now. And these things are becoming ingrained in people's psyche because that's what they're being told. And they're being told by these entities that people have become to trust. Now, don't get me wrong. There is becoming more and more rampant this movement of people who they can't just say, okay, because they say it's true, because this person in this off-white blouse says that this is what has happened, or this is what has been told by an inside source, someone close to the case. They don't just go, okay, I believe that, but there is still an abundance of that. There is still an abundance of it, and that's why people, again, like me, need to exist, because we need to level the playing field, not so much to say that we're supporting of someone who may have committed a crime. Well, I suppose you are supporting someone who may have committed a crime. You'd never support someone, and look, I would never support someone who has done a heinous act, certainly not. But at this stage, and when it comes to a situation where you've looked at everything that has been pushed out and you continue to ask people why they are willing to convict and execute someone, and they keep using references from mainstream media, legacy media, to bolster their reasonings as to why that's okay, that drives me insane. So when you look at that clip at the beginning, what do you see? What do you see? Now, I know that you could turn around and see, well, what I see a monster hiding in plain sight. Because that's how mainstream media would word it. But they don't even want to get into that because that's too risky. It's too risky to do that because that looks like they're reaching because there is something tangible to see. But it's like when we saw the police stop, isn't it? When Brian Kohberger was interacting with the female officer. Now, on one hand, you had the people who were like, well, he dealt with that, like, quite well. He was respectful. He was just explaining the situation that he was in, which many people felt that he handled that in a way that they would have even handled it, and potentially even better than they would have handled it. Some people would have been perhaps more rude, more abrupt, but he handled it well, in my opinion. And then, like I say, this video at the beginning sees him interacting with a female who looks to be extremely comfortable in his presence. Now, did she just meet him on that day? Had she never seen him before? Or had they built up a relationship where he had managed to get close enough for her to feel that comfortable around him? Now, if that's the case, when you look at the Idaho 4 case itself and what we're saying happened, so we have to trust that Brian Kohberger, while he was not in this area for that amount of time, when he eventually got to Washington, he was able not only to build relationships, not only able to do the things that we've been told that he's done, but simultaneously plan for this heinous act. So again, this is where you have to consider, so is Brian Kohberger just this monster in plain sight? Or is there a potential, however small, that he is just someone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time? And within the dynamic of Moscow and Washington, they were able to push a narrative onto an individual that law enforcement fell for. Now, we have heard that Brian Kohberger was this harsh marker. He was somebody who, my way of looking at that is he cared. You know, if someone's a harsh marker, if someone is asking people to do better, then doesn't that turn around and kind of look like someone who is doing their job, not for the sake of doing it, but because they care, because they think that people can do better, so they request better, they demand better. The best teachers of us aren't those who sit on their hands and allow us to do what we want to do. They are the ones that push and force us to adapt and become better. And I have touched on this previously. But for the life of me, the only things that paint Brian Kohberger in a bad light are the stories told by mainstream media and these media entities that have an abundance of power, a power to manufacture their own stories and own ways to look at things. So we have to sit there and we have to decide how we want to be as individuals. Are we a race of people who just want to condemn and burn people, or are we a race of people who are willing to step back and wait and say, hold on, I understand that there's evidence that there are questions that need to be answered, and they do need to be answered. But as equally as the questions that exist that need to be answers that would go in the direction of pushing Brian Kohberger towards execution, there are equally as many questions that make you put the brakes on and say, hold on, I don't think we've quite seen enough to succumb to that conclusion that he is the person, 100%. And I wonder how people would feel about Brian Kohberger had mainstream media not been part of the equation. They stepped back and they left it, or they told stories that were honest and they kept their open mind. that Brian Koberger had indeed been involved in saving the life of a female. He had been approached by a female to assist her in a time of need where she felt scared and concerned, and she reached out to him for help and support. Or showing videos of Brian Koberger interacting with females. Brian Koberger seems to constantly be surrounded by females. So my question is, if he was a monster hiding in plain sight, and he just wanted to kill, say he had these equivocations, why didn't he just kill someone closer? Why didn't he worm his way into someone who was close to him? Surely that would have been his better option. This seems to have been a massive fucking curveball. So someone who seemingly could get close to women, obtain their trust, hide in plain sight like a monster, which I'm sure some of you, when I asked that question, you said that Brian Koberger was a monster hiding in plain sight. So if that's the case, why didn't he become that monster closer to home, closer to those who he was able to befriend and betrust? Why did he all of a sudden take that migration over to Moscow, Idaho? What caught his eye? What caught his attention? What made him do that? Because that's what continues to make him the round peg trying to be fit into a square hole. For me anyway. Let me know down below where you stand, and I'll catch you all in the next one.